Hi. Once we've done our backend API, we are ready to move to another section, which is our front-end web application. And our web application will be based on a React framework. React or React.js, that's a front-end framework for JavaScript developed by Facebook. Actually, that's a very good thing that has been developed by such a giant, because we can be sure that it's not gonna go anywhere soon, because they have enough funding and also enough community to build that and support that framework. So at the moment, if we go back to the hotframeworks.com, if you go to JavaScript, at the moment React is on the top of the list, which is the most popular framework in JavaScript world. So that's kind of reason why I picked React and recording this course, because if you want to have a good position on the job market, you kind of need to know React. And with a Django on the backend, it makes a perfect pair, because you have unlimited options what you can do, and with both that technologies you can build anything you like. So what is React? For a front-end framework for building a single page application. So you can see here I'm on the reactjs.org page, and if you are looking for any resources, you can go to docs or tutorial and you can learn a lot of things from there. So that's very useful. The documentation is very well written, so I advise you to go there and check things out. So you can see here a little bit of snippets here, and we will be talking about this more. I will show you how to create your React application, and we will be using that. So what exactly we need to have to make a React works on our machine? First, what we need to do is we need to make sure Node.js is installed on your machine. At the moment I am on Mac OS, and this page I'm on the nodejs.org automatically detects my operating system, which is Mac, and then I can download the version from here. What you need to do is download your LTS version for your machine. So if you're on Windows, you will have the version for Windows. Just click there and you will have a friendly wizard. Next, and you will install Node.js. You need to make sure you have Node.js installed, and the way to check it if you have Node, it's you can type in terminal. I open the terminal here. It doesn't really matter where in the folders we are. We can type in Node, like Node.js, and then -v or version. V is a shortcut for version. So if I click enter now, you can see here version 10.15 is installed on my machine. What I can also do, and you need to check and make sure you also have it installed, is npm, and then you can check the version with the same -v. And you can see npm 6.9 is installed on my machine. This npm, which is Node Package Manager, you don't need to install on your machine, because it's a part of this build. So whatever you will install this, you will have npm installed with the node. So basically the only things you need to do is just that LTS version. In the moment I'm recording this, the latest is the 10, but if you will have a newer, just go for the LTS and it will be sorted. Another option is, and this is fully optional, is the yarn. Yarn is kind of replacement for npm. For some time it was faster and more reliable than npm, but npm kind of get back in speed for development, and now I think they're very equal, so it doesn't really matter if you use a yarn or npm. But I wanted to show you here the yarn website, and if you want to install, you can go install yarn, and you can see here on your operating system you can install that very easily in a few seconds. But you will see a lot of resources online using yarn, but it doesn't really matter if you have yarn or npm. If you see a command somewhere yarn and then some other commands, you can replace it with npm and it will work exactly the same. So that's another option. If you want to install it, go ahead and install it. I will show you how our things are done with the simple npm, which is basically the same kind of package manager. You can run the commands with npm, you can run the commands with yarn, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so once you will have all that and you will have that installed and you make sure you have Node and npm installed on your machine, in the next video I will show you how we can create our first application with React, and we will use npm for it. Okay, we are in the terminal now and we have everything installed, so we are ready to create our first React application. And I have to say, there is not just one way to create a React application. Basically, you can hook up a React library to your existing websites, just downloading the source code, for example from CDN, and then you can start using React. What I will show you now is I will show you command line interface for creating brand new React application. I will be using terminal for this, and that's very handy because we can type one command and everything will be set up for us automatically. So what I will do is I will go to my desktop here, and here I can create a new React app. To do that, I need to type in npx like that. So basically npx, it's a command available from npm. So since version, I think version 5, you can use npm, and then you can type create -react -app like that. So npx create -react -app, and then after the space you need to name your application. So let's do first -app like that. We can name it whatever we like, but for this tutorial I will just make it first application like that, and then I click enter. And what is happening now is npm will download all the requirements like React, React DOM and React scripts, that's the libraries that are available, or the frameworks modules that are available for us, and it will be downloaded automatically from the server and it will create a new application. So you can see here the progress. In a second it will be all ready, and you can see here everything is ready for us. So what's happening here is we have installed and create our first application with React, and you can see here success, created first app inside our desktop. So here the blue one is the commands you can run, and you can see all of the commands start with npm. So npm start, if you will have yarn, it will be yarn start or yarn run build and so on and so on. So basically what this is options to run some commands, and this will do something for us. So npm start will start a development server, and this is what we are after. We want to have a server running locally, so we'll build our application and we'll open that in the Chrome or whatever the browser of our choice is, and we will run this application, and we will be able to write a code and see the output in the browser. And npm will help us doing that, and I will show you in a second how does it work. np run build will actually build a files for production. You can see here for production. For production, that means for the live server, because if you will do npm start, it will kind of build a development server. So it's not gonna prepare all the files for us. Run build will take our code compiled into ready minified version, and that's npm run build. We can also do npm test, which is testing our application. If you will write unit test or an end-to-end test, with this command you can run it, but we are not going to focus on the testing in this tutorial. So you can do your research on your own if you would like to have your application testable. And then you can also do a run eject. So remove this tool and copies build dependencies, configuration files and scripts into the app directory. So if you do that, you can't really revert it. We are not going to do this. So I will show you how to do normal development and then build later on. So what you need to do now is you can do cd and then name of the folder, which is, you can see first app, this is the name of our application, and also it's the name of the folder. So let's go inside our folder. We are inside this folder now, and then we can do npm start. npm start. What is happening here? I put npm start here. You can see starting development server, and automatically our default browser, for me it's Chrome, is starting create application. So you can see here, new tab has been opened, localhost, which is our local development server on port 3000. That's a React application. And you can see here, we have some React logo and some output and a link to learn React. And if I go back to the terminal here, you can see that our server is running, and you can see here local or link to on your network. If you would like to access from another computer this React application, you can use this IP to access it if you are on the same network. So that's pretty much it. Our application is running. We had one command and then we run server, which is npm start, and application is running. So let's go to the Visual Studio Code and we can open that folder now. First app, open. And we have our application here open. And in the next video, I will show you and we will walk through all the files that are included in this folder. Okay, so we have our application open in this program, the code editor, and in the previous video I click Command O, or I can do File, Open here, like that, to open the folder. And once the folder is open, I can see that on the left pane here. I can also collapse it if I like to make more space for the code. This main section here is for the code. So for example, if I open this file, you can see here the file is here, and I can collapse it. You will have more space there. What else do we have on the left hand side? We have search, so you can search in files. If you have a phrase or a word that you would like to search for, you can use this. Then you have integration with Git, then you have the back console here, and you have some plugins, so you can also search for plugins and you can install them. And there's hundreds different plugins for different languages in different frameworks, so go ahead and install some of the plugins you like or you will find very useful. So I will come back here to the source code, and on the left hand side we have a few files. So let's go through these files first, and it will give us a kind of hint what the React application is. We create our app with a single command, and all of that has been made for us automatically. So first let's start with node modules. You can see it's a kind of gray, and there is a reason why this is gray. Basically, that's a list of all dependencies. So all libraries, all that React use for this application will be installed here. And you can see here hundreds of different small or bigger libraries, and all dependent on each other. So everything will be installed here. But in fact, you could remove that folder, node modules, completely. If I will remove it, what I could do is I could do npm install, and it will be installed automatically. And how do npm install will know what to install? Basically, we have package.json. And what package.json is, it's a file that has built-in dependencies. So basically, if we want to use some kind of libraries, we will add it to the dependencies, as you can see here. So the package.json, we are telling that's our application. that's our version, and then we can have some flags like private, true or false, and then we have dependencies section. That means we want to use this React, this version, React DOM, React scripts, and so on, and that if we do npm install, it will be installed in the node modules here. Another option is npm update. It will take the latest version and it will install the latest version, and that will be here also written. So then we have scripts. Scripts is, we already talked about it before. Scripts are the little snippets, the command line commands that we can do, like npm start will start our server, as we've done before. And then we have npm build, test, eject, and so on. Then we have some configuration here, and then we have browser list, and so on. So basically, we don't need to change much in this package.json. It is automatically created for us, but the important part here is the dependencies. Dependencies will kind of tell what we need to also have. At the moment, we don't have dev dependencies, but we can also have another version, dev dependencies. And this dev dependencies will be a list of different libraries or modules that we want to install during our development. So there are some tools that will help us developing our application, but they are not needed for a production build. So once we'll put our application on the server, we don't need to include them. So we can divide dependencies that needs to be always there, and also dev dependencies that are dependencies only for our development process. So basically that's package.json. We can close this, and also we have another file here, package log.json. That's kind of locking whatever we install with npm install, or whatever we had already this because we've done create a React app. This is locked file, so once we have that file, we can give it to someone else, and we will be sure that all that things that has been installed will have this version fixed, because if you do npm update, you might have a different version and you might have some problems with compatibility in between the different packages. So that's lock is kind of locking to the current build a different version from this file. And then we have a simple readme, which is automatically included there. Then we have a git ignore. By default, create React app is also initiate the git. So the git is included in this, and in the git ignore you have a list of the things that should be ignored, like for example node modules. There's no point to include the node modules inside our git, inside our version control, because we can easily recreate it with npm install. So that will just put extra files, hundreds of or thousands of different files that we don't actually need to include it. We will just exclude it from the git because we can easily recreate it. So git ignore is just a list of things that we should ignore inside our git repository. Then we have two folders, public and then source. Source is our application. Public is traditional HTML website. So if I will open HTML here, you can see that's normal HTML. We have some head and we have some body. So let's go through what we have here. And that's a standard setup with some meta and links. And basically we have a manifest file by default, and then we have a manifest here. So basically that manifest, it's a setup for PWA, which is progressive web app, and by default is automatically almost enabled. You need to do a few more things here, but that's included in the build. So this is all prepared for being a progressive web app, and you have link to manifest here, and then you have some setup for the favicon, which is included here. So basically that's our landing page, and React is single page application. That means we don't go to another, if we navigate to another with some links to another section, we are not gonna reload this or navigate to different page. We will be always staying with index.html, and we will just replace the content on the go. So here what we have two things. First, if you don't have a JavaScript enabled in your browser, which almost everyone has it JavaScript enabled, we will display this because React application won't work with JavaScript. But if you do, we'll do simply display a div with ID root. And what does it mean? I will show you that in a second. If we'll go to the source and I will go to index.js here, and you can see here get element by ID root, and that line here allows app to be rendered. So basically React DOM, which is document object model React, render this app, which is this, and we will be talking more about the components later on, but basically we take some component from our source, which is this app.js here, and we put it in the element root, which is here. So we have a single div on the page, and we take a component and kind of inject it and show it there. So what is app? App, if we go app.js here, that's our component. We'll be talking about component in the next section, but this, you can see here, that part, it's our content that we see on this page here. So you can see edit and logo and some link. That's exactly what we see here. So we have image, we have paragraph, which is edit, and then we have that link, and then learn React. What I would like to show you is, by default, if I will make a little bit more space here, you can see here, and I will collapse a little bit here. So I will divide the screen to half. So basically what we have here is the code editor and here browser. If I do some changes here, like for example, I will remove that image and remove it, and then I will click save here. I'm not gonna navigate to this. You can see that automatically refresh because we have our server running, and it will look for the changes in our code and it will be reflected automatically here. So if I will take this link and remove it, save it, Ctrl S, you can see it's already changing. So I can do here, hello from React, save, hello from React. So this is how it works. We have our code, and it will be once we run our server, and we can run this server also from here. So I go view, terminal, and I can go to terminal. I will click Ctrl C here. I will close the terminal, so application is not running anymore. Or if I go here and refresh it, you can see the site cannot be reached, but this time I can do npm start from here, and you will have automatically start your server from here, and you can see this will pick up the new version and it will be shown hello from React. So now we have everything set up in our IDE, so this will run our application, and then we can live code it here and we'll see the effect here. So that's what we will do in the rest of our tutorial, and I will show you piece by piece what React is capable of. Okay, let's talk about components now. And in this video we will be doing different components, and I will show you how to write them and what are these in React. So basically in React everything is component. So what does it mean? That means any function, any piece of code can become a component. So what is component in fact? Component, it's a reusable piece of code. So on this example, as we can see here, that's our function here, and a function called app. And that function renders hello from React on our page. So in the previous video I explained how this is all done, and we use getElementById root, and inside we render our application, and you can see this name here, it's the same name as we have here. So basically our function is a component here, and we have a few types of the component. So let's clear this up a little bit. So I'll remove the logo, we don't use it anymore. And then also, actually I can leave it there for now. So this file app.js, it's a component. It's one of the the main components in our application. But I'll show you a few ways how we can create different components. And component, I can create it using a simple function. So function, like that. And let's say our text, like that. And then that's a normal JavaScript function, our text. So what we can do inside our function, we can return something. And that's a combination of HTML and JavaScript. So I can do paragraph. This is our text. So I have a paragraph, and by the way, this is JSX syntax. It's something unique in React. They developed that syntax, and for me it's kind of hard to read because it's not very intuitive. This is JavaScript, this is typical JavaScript, and then we have kind of HTML, which is not really HTML, but for example, the div class name, normally in the HTML we would use class, something like this, but class is restricted for JavaScript language, so they have different naming convention, which is class name, if you would like to apply class up to it. So basically in one file we have mixture of everything, and I don't necessarily like it, but if you would like to use React, you kind of need to get used to it. So coming back to our function, our text, that's the function we have in our system, and we can use it or we can reuse it. So we have hello from React here. Let's say we would like to use our component here. So it will be as easy as opening new tag, and then I will paste in our text, which is the name of the function. So I will do it like that, and you can see IDE is automatically closing that tag for me. Or what I can do is I can do a closing tag inside, and I will open and close it in one go. So our text, this is tag, the name of the function we have there. So if I will save it now, you can see this is our text rendered. So our function become a component just because we declare it here. If I would like to duplicate a control, I will do Shift Option and down 3 times, and I will save it. You can see this is our text 3 times display. So it is reusable code that we can use in our application. So basically any function inside our React is component. So everything in React is component. I will remove it now and come back to one here. So this is our text. So that's typical function, which is our component. And you can see here, that's also a function. And basically what we have here, it's a component as well. So this big chunk that was created when we create our application is our component, and that's a functional component. And I will remove it for now, this one, and also this one, because we'll have an error, and we'll create a proper component from scratch. So what we need to do, and I will show you actually 2 ways of creating components. We will do to source code here, and inside our source I will create a new folder, this one, and I will call it components, like that. Components, like that. And inside components I can create a new file, and let's name it header.js. So it's a normal JavaScript file, so header.js, and we'll create inside this file, we'll create a new component. So what we need to do, basically we will need to do similar things as we've done here. So we need to import React from React, like that. So once you will have that imported React, that means you inside this file, anything like a function will become a component. So we can do function And then let's do header like that. And inside that function we can return something. Return, and we can do h1. This is header, like that. So we have our function here, and if we would like to use that component here, what we need to do is we need to import it. But before we will import this header into our main application, we need to export it from here. And we have two ways to export it. We can do export header like this. So I could do like that. Export header, which is kind of object. We exporting object, and inside we export our function. And then I have this choice to import it here. So I go import, and then I do this one, this header, because that's the name of our function, and then from, and then we need to specify from where we would like to import it. So basically, if I open this, we are inside app.js, so we need to go to the components folder and then to header.js. So I will close it now, and let's do that. So from the current folder, I will do components and then slash and then header. You can see here the header has been imported, and once this is imported, I can use it here. But you can see header, you already have that in this application when we started. So we'll remove whatever was there and we'll use our own. So I will do header and then close the tag like that. So what we have is we don't have that hello from React anymore. What we'll have in our application will have that header, and we import that header from our component from the file we created, and this is header. That's what we have in the component. So I will go here, save it, and this is header. You can see it here. So basically our application, the main application, main component is this one, and inside we import and we can inject more things. So I said previously that we have two ways to export something and import. This is one way. We export this, and this name needs to be exactly as here. But there's another way. If you have just one component or one thing you would like to export from the file, what you can do is, instead of passing like this, you can do export default header. So if I save it now, I will have an error because I also need to change the way it's imported. And then instead of this, I can import header, and it will work exactly the same as it was before, but this time I can name it whatever I like. If I don't want to call it header, it doesn't have to be the same name as we have it here, because that's a default export. So by default we export this one, and you can have only one default export per file. So whatever you will call it here, it will be called. So usually it's a good practice to call it the same way, but you have an option to call it in a different way because it's a default one, and you don't need to pass that curly brackets anymore. So basically that's two ways you can export and import stuff. Next way to create a component is a class-based component, and I will show you how to do it now. So let's create another component. I will go to components here and I will create new file, and let's call it footer.js. I will collapse it to make it more space, and then we'll create a component, another component in this file, and we'll import it in the main application here. I will close those as we don't need them anymore, and I will do similar thing as we've done in the previous one. So import React from React. So we are telling that this file will be a React file, and whatever will have it, it will be our component. Also, what we need to do is we also need to import our component. So I will do comma, and then we will import component as well. So that's a keyword from React. So we are importing React, which is a default export, and we also import component. So what I can do here is we can create a new class. So we'll do class and call it footer. So that's in class syntax, and then we can do extends component like that. And inside the component, this will be similar as we've done before. So inside here, that will be our reusable component, but the syntax is different. We call it class instead of the function, and we tell it that it is a component using extend component. So we need to do a few things inside, and also we'll need to export it. So export, let's use default one again. Default and footer like that. So the error is gone, and then before we will actually include we'll go and include in app.js, we need to do a few things. So the class based components needs to have a function render, like you can see here, and then parentheses and then curly brackets like that, and the render needs to return something. So we can return here, let's say h2, this is our footer, like that. So we have a simple class, and I will save it now, and let's come back to the app.js, which is our main application, and instead of header, now we can actually duplicate it, and I will do footer, and then I will import that from footer. So we have our footer here, and let's say this will be, let's say, main content here. I'll just put something in between the header and the footer, and then inside I will import, I will insert a footer. So what we have our basically our application, then we have a header, which is separate component. I just put some content there, and then we have a footer. If I will save it now, you can see this is footer. So we have two different components. One component is a class based, and the syntax is like that. You need to extend component, and you need to import that component from React, and then you have inside render, and you return something from that, and then you export it. Another syntax is just a simple function and the name of the function, and you return it straight away. So when to use functional components and when to use class-based components, basically the idea is you will use functional wherever you can. So functional is shorter and simpler way to use the components. So if you don't need extra functionality, and we will be talking about this later on in the course, then go for the functional, because it's just easier to use. And then if you need some kind of extra functionality, then go for a class. So by default, I will pick the functional first, and then class for something more complicated. And the more complicated is state. If we need to handle the state for a component, then we'll use the class one. Otherwise, the functional will be just enough. So that's all about the components. Components is a crucial part of the React, and they are everywhere. So every single piece of code we have on our page, it's a component, and we'll be using components in this course a lot. Okay, let's talk about props in this video. So props, it's a essential way in React to pass some information from one component to another. And basically props are working in the relationship parent-child. So if we have some information inside the app, we can pass this information into our child, which is whatever it's included in the return here. You can see this one is embedded in the app. That means the app is parent and this is child. And then header might have another child. So basically we can pass props into the child from the parent. How we can actually do that? It's really up to us what we would like to pass and how we would like to pass it. Let's start with our header here. So we have header, and that's normal functional component here, and this is a header. Let's say this is a header. We would like to have it dynamic. So I will go back to the application, and what we can do is inside this tag we can include some extra info. So let's call it info, like that. This name, it's whatever we would like to pass it. We can actually invent this. So I can call it info, I can pass some whatever I like. So I will do equal, and then I will do some string. What I can do here is I can pass a string. Let's say this is my message, like that. And then what is happening here is into the header I'm passing that info. This is my message. If I will save it now, and then you can see nothing has been changed because I haven't used this in header yet. So going to header, if I would like to use that information that I passed from the app to the header, I will need to use props, like that. So the function takes the argument of props, and this props I can use it. So instead of this header here, I can use a syntax of a curly brackets, like that, so opening and close, and inside this I can run any JavaScript I like. So in my case I would like to get props and then info, which is the name of the variable we made up here, so info. So this info is becoming a props, and then I have an access to props info here. If I will save it now, this is my message. You can see it's not nowhere here printed, but this is the info I'm passing from here. So if I'll make it, this is my message, you can see this is reflected here. What is more important, if I will duplicate this, if I will change this to something else and I will save it, you can see this is my message, another info. That's the same component. So we use header in both cases, but for both of them I pass different message, and I can display that message here. So I can have reusable component, and I can change the customize components with that extra info I'm fitting in. I don't need to limit this to just one. I can pass more arguments, like for example my number, and then I can say my number is 6, and then I'll just copy this, I'll put it here. It doesn't really matter if that's on the new line or in the same line, but I make it here because it will be more readable. Once it is inside the stack, it will be passed. So I have my number 6 and then my number 4, two different numbers, and then I can also use that number. If I'll save it now, nothing happens because we just pass it to component, but this component is not using this. So if I would like to also display my number, what I have to do is, I will show you one problem we have with React. So I can do h2 my number is, and then in the curly brackets I can do props and then my number. So this is what I pass, but we have an error. So first thing is return by default is just prepared to return one line. So if we would like to return more than one line like that, we need to use parentheses like that and then wrap it all around it here, and then we still have a problem. You can see here we have an error because the return is prepared to return only one element, HTML element. So what we could do is we can have div like this and then wrap everything inside in a div, and I can indent it properly. So you can see here, I save it and everything's fine. So this is my message like that. This is from the first component, and this is from another component. So you can see 6 and 4 is different, and we pass it to right. But we need to make sure that return will use that parenthesis here, and also will return one element. But that div is also rendered on our page. So that's create extra element on our page. So what we might need to do is, instead of using this div, we can use the React way, which is React and then fragment, like that. And then I also need to close it. So basically what React fragment does is just create empty container, and it's not going to be rendered on the page. It will just wrap this and return it easily. So instead of div, that div will eventually come to the page and it will create extra container. We might not need that. React fragment is not doing this. So it's like returning empty one, and it will return only content of it. So it's still working as it was. And you can see here we can return more than one line at a time. So this is how you use the props with a normal function. So how can we do the same with our class-based? Basically here you don't have a way to pass the props, but if you do extend components, the props are automatically inside our class. So what we can do here, and let's say footer, and let's say trademark, page by Christian, or whatever. So what we are doing here, we are passing another information to the footer, and we name that information as a trademark. So we can pass it like that, and then inside footer, you can see here the dot. That means this file is not saved. If I will do Command S, I will save the file, and you can see here everything is updated. So footer.js, and this is my class-based component, and I could use the instead of this is our footer, I can use my inside the brackets props, because they are automatically included, and then I can do props dot, and then I can paste it. I don't know why this is pasting that for me. So I will do props like that, and then trademark. But you can see here error, because we are inside the class. So if you would like to refer to props, we need to use keyword this. This refers to the class, and then we use from that class props and the trademark, which is something that we passed in here, trademark. So once I will save it, you can see here page by Christian. This is the trademark that I'm passing to this component. So basically this is the way, I will clean it up a little bit. This is the way we can pass information from our parent, from one component to another. We just put any message we like, or any number, or any piece of data. We can pass actually a complex object as well. It doesn't have to be a simple string or a number. We can pass any information from one function to another, and then render that, or passing even further down the chain. So if the header will have another components here loaded and implemented here, you can pass through the props later to this child as well. So this is the way we can pass the information around, and this is using the props. So if you have the functional, if you have the class-based one, the props are already included, but you need to use this props syntax. And if you have the functional one, you need to inject that, pass it as an argument in the function, so props, and then you can name it here. Okay, in this video we will discover how we can actually communicate it back to the parent, and we'll also learn how to use the events and what the events are. So what we can do here is, before we'll move on, I will clean a little bit here. So I'll create just a h tag here in there, and I can remove the React fragment. So we'll have just one h here. So what we have here is just a simple header, and then we can also go to the app and then I can remove this. So we have a simplified version of the same application as we had before. And now let's go to the component here and let's do something else. So what we can do is, it doesn't really matter if we do that in the functional or we can do it in the class. What we can do is we can have events, and the events are based on the input or based on the interaction with the users. So let's go to the footer here, and this is our class-based component. And inside this h2, what we can do is we can create an event. So I will, inside this h tag, so let's put this into another line like that. So we have just one element returned. And then inside that h2, I can do on click, which is one of the events available for us in React. And basically this is the same as the click in JavaScript. So whatever we click on the h2 element, we can trigger a function. So I will do curly brackets here like that, and that means I will run a JavaScript. So let's create our function first. I will create a function here, for example, create alert like that, and that's a simple function inside our class. So what I can do is I can do this because I'm referring to our class, and then I will do create alert. I don't pass parentheses like this because this will be triggered whenever we render this page, but we don't want to have it trigger this function whenever we render. We want to have it on click only. So you do this create alert, and then we have this function. So what we can do inside this function alert, let's say hello, you clicked me, for example, like that. So what we have now is we have h2 element, and we bind on click to this, and then we trigger this function which will do alert. So let's test it now. I will go here, and we have our footer. So I will click it now, and you can see here, hello, you clicked me. That's the alert that we trigger with our on click. So basically, if you work with events, you do on and then name of the event. In our case, it's an event click. So what we can actually do as well, we can use this same functionality as we have here for communicating back to our parent. So let's come back here to app.js, and then we can pass this as a props, but also we can pass the function as a props as well. So if I will go back to the footer, I'll close it now in the header, and instead of having that function here, I will take it off and I will put it here inside there. So we'll do function create alert, and then we'll alert here. So this create alert might be passed to this function, to this component, like for example alert or my alert is equal to create alert like that. So my alert is reference to this function. So I will do my alert now, and that's a part of the props as well. So if I go to the footer now, and then I can do this props and then my alert. So what we are doing here, on click, I will trigger props my alert, and this my alert, it's a function. My alert here, it's a create alert function. So if I will do this, you can see it is working the same way. So basically this time I don't trigger the local function from here, I trigger a function from the parent. So I can communicate back to the child, which is passing some information, and I can also communicate it from the child back to the parent. So I use this props the same here, this props, and then the name of this what we pass here, and that's referencing back here. So this is two-way communication in between the components, child and parent, and you can do it using the props. So that's how it's done. What else we can have instead of on-click? We can have, for example, if we'll have input, let's say type text, and then we'll need to make sure this is just one element returned. We can use the fragment. We need to, oh, that's inside the return, so we kind of mess up. I will just return it here, and then we have return there. So I will do like that. So I will wrap it first, and then I will indent it, and then I will create a div. So I kind of doing a lot of things, but I will repeat it in a second again. So what I did is I have return. I just return a single element, which is div. I can do reactive fragment, but it doesn't really matter for us at this point. This is just easy. And we had the same h2 with click as we had it before. You can see here, and also I put input there, so I can have more than one elements now. And then here I can do on change like that, and then I can have another function. So this changed, for example, and then this change we can implement it here. So that's our function here, like that, and then I can do console log something like changed here. So this is, I have an input here. I will open our inspector, our code. I will put it on the bottom like that, and I will open console. So whatever we will change here, we are expecting output there. So I'm changed, you see that many times I've changed something, and that is trigger. So you can have different kind of events in your application. You might have it on click, you might have it on change, or you might have it on different one. Actually, if you start typing on, you can see here a lot of different events are available, like on mouse, up, and so on are available. I've just show you the most popular one, which is on click, on change, and so on. So that's how it is done with the events. You just put it event on the element, and then you refer the function. You can refer the function with the props to external parent, and then you can handle this on the parent side, or you can do it inside this function, inside this class. If you have functional based components like you have it here, then you do a function outside of this, so it will be normal function. But if you use the class like you use it here, you don't use the function keyword, you just name of the function or the method, because the function inside the class is a method. So you pass it like this. So we have a few options how to handle this. And in the next video we'll be talking about state. Also I will show you how this kind of setups makes a little bit of a problem for passing some values, because we might have a problem to access this inside our function, and we'll be talking about it later on. Okay, let's talk about state now. I mentioned state before, and I said if you would like to use a state, then you need to go for class-based component, because in the functional component, as we use in a header here, we don't have option to use the state. So basically this is stateless components, and the class-based can contain a state. What is state and why this is used? Basically state is very similar to the props. but the props are immutable. So that means they cannot be changed. So I can't go just to this value here and then like for example this trademark and change it, because this is not allowed. So if we would like to have something in the component that will allow us to change and keep the state of this component, we need to use a state. And in order to use a state, it is as simple as using keyword state like that, and then equal to and curly brackets. So inside state, this is our object of the data we'd like to keep or maintain within this component. So basically what we can have, for example text, whatever we can call it, whatever we like, and let's say call it name like that, and I will put my name here. So what I have in state, I have a piece of information and I have a name called Christian, and that state stays with my component. So I can reuse it and I can do something about it. So I will use this input as we have it here for show you how the state works. So basically what we can do is we can assign, I will move this to the next line, and here I will do a value. So this value will be this state, and then I will do dot, and you can see here name is one of the property I can use. This is the name here. So what I can do here is similar way as we do with this props, and this props coming from outside to our component, but this state it's inside. So this state name will be the value of this input. If I will save it now, you can see here Christian is printed inside our field here. So it's still working the same way as we've done. You can see here it's been changed, and this is a trigger, but this time we call this value here. So let's say we would like to update this value state wherever we change something. You can see here change has been triggered, so this function is triggered, but if I will type in here, I can see here it's incrementing, but nothing is changing. Why is that? Because the state is like that. So it stays Christian all the time, and we pass it a value here, there. So even if we change it, it comes back to this state because the state stays as it is here. So nothing's changed. What we need to do is we need to pass some information to this change, which is this function, and then we need to use it and change the state. So we'll do that, but I will show you we will have some problems. So first thing is that if I will pass values like this, it will be triggered automatically. I mentioned that before, so we can't really do this. Another option is to use the event. So if I will go name it event like this, and I will try to print it here, I will save it, and you can see here I have synthetic event there, and I can have all the information for that event. So I have event target and so on. The problem become when we would like to use this inside this function. If I would like to refer to this class, which is I need to refer to the state. So if I would like to use this state name, for example, if I will duplicate this and I would like to do this state and then name like that, I will disable this for a moment, and if I would like to do that now, you can see here an error, and this error is cannot read property state of undefined, because this is undefined. This refers to this function and not this class. So what we will need to do is we need to bind this to this function, and there's a few ways we can actually do this. So you could do this change, and then you can do bind like that, bind this. So basically what is doing that, so I can do that and you can see it's working again. So you bind this, which is the class, into this, but the syntax is quite horrible. So I am not going to use this syntax. Another option will be to use the constructor. You can go constructor, and inside the constructor you can bind this change to this class, but the syntax is even more terrible, so I'm not gonna use this. Another option will be to use the arrow functions. So this is normal function with a normal syntax like that, but we can also use the arrow function. Arrow functions are very similar to this function, but we need to change it too. So change, this was the name of our function, and it will stay the same as it is, and then we pass some arguments, and then we do equal and then greater than sign. So we create kind of arrow, and this is basically the same as the function word. So the syntax is a little bit different, but this time we will have an access to this without binding this. So if I will save and then use it here, you can see it's working again. So using this kind of syntax, so we have name of our variable, and we name it the same way as we named the function before, and then equal, and that's our arrow function. So it will be the same as the syntax function, like that, but that will throw an error because the function has no this inside. But using arrow function like this, we can use it. Actually, we don't need those. This is a single argument, so it looks a little bit weird, but once you get used to it, it's fine. So we have console log state name, and you can see here this is printed. So I will remove it for now, and let's go back to our change. So what is available on our event? We can go target, and then we can go value, like that. So I will do change and then value. If I will save it now, and then I will try to type in something, you can see at the very end of this we'll have changes OSL and so on. This is what I type in here, but it still stay and go back to the normal state because we put it here, the value. Even if we change it and we have a new value, we pass it here and it's reset back to the value of this state. So what we need to do is every time we change it, we need to update the state. So normally the intuition is telling us, okay, we know how to update this state, and then name is equal to something, and then we can get the value from here. But this is not a proper way to do it. And so if we will do like that, it's not a proper way to do it, because we should not access the state like this, set the state. We should use a proper function for this. So instead of that, we can do this set state, and that's a function, and inside here we can pass it. So we do object, and then we can do name, and then this value. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting this new value, which will be already with my new letter, and then I set the state of this, I set the state of name to this value. So if I will save it now, and then I will do Christian, you can see I'm updating the state. So if I will take this, and put it here, I can do, let's print out this state and then name, like that. So I'm trying to print a state now. You can see here this is printed. So my state is changed, and we trigger that here. So we do this set state, and then what property I would like to change, and then value of that property. And this value is coming from this event, which is on change. So we pass this value to the function. This function set a state in here. So in fact, in state, we can have local variables and local states that we will do something about it. So the functional are stateless, they don't have a state and they can't contain dynamic information, and the class-based components can have a state. In fact, we don't need to restrict to just one, we might have multiple, so we can have age and so on and so on. So basically the state is the way to hold our data in the component and do something about it. So whenever we would like to refer to our state, we do this state and the name of the this variable, which is this. And then if we want to change it, then we use the function this set state, like that. And this is the way to handle the information inside our components. Okay. In this movie, I will show you how we can use a lifecycle methods and what the lifecycle methods are. So basically, wherever we render, we use our component. So like in this case, this is class-based component. So the functional has no way to use any of the state or lifecycle methods. So I will close this. And as I said, the functional are for a simple use case. So whatever we need to have something more complex, we'll use the class-based one. And whatever we use, like this one, this is our component inside our app.js. And then we can hook into the lifecycle methods. And if I will start typing here component, you can see here component. We have a few options, and this methods here, that's built-in methods inside this component, so they are available straight away and we can implement them if we need them. So basically, what are these? We have different life cycles of a component. So component might be rendered and might be attached to our page and deattached later on, and we'll have different things that will happen during his life. So we have, for example, did catch, did mount, did update, will mount, will receive props, will unmount, and will update. So basically that is depend when this function will be triggered. So if we want to have something after our component was mount and did mount, then we can use this function did mount, and then we can do something about it. And then we can, for example, will receive props. So once we receive props, we can set this, for example, stage to props and so on and so on. And then it will be the same when our component is dying. So whatever it will be deattached from the page, we'll have will unmount and so on. So for example, I will use component did mount here, and that's a normal function, the method inside our class. And let's say I can do the way I've done this before, set state. I will clear my name, so my state is, let's do it like this. So my state at the beginning of this component life is empty. So if I will save it now, then I can see here nothing is in the field because the name is empty. So I can do component did mount, and whatever this component will mount, I can do set state name to my name, for example. And you can see my name is here. So component mount first, and then this trigger this function, and then inside that function I set my state name to my name, and it is here. So all that lifecycle method component, like you can see here, that's different stages of our life of our component, and you can use it, depends on what functionality you would like to achieve. So very common practice is if you need to fetch some data from external API or something, whatever you will mount your component, you can do it is component did mount. because you have all the elements in place, and then you can fetch the data here, and then you can set to state, and then state will be reflected on the page. So all of that method, sometimes you need to, if you use the observables, for example, you can subscribe to some observable when you did mount, and then you unsubscribe when you will unmount. So components, so you will unmount like this. So you might have a subscribe here, and then you later on when you will are just about to kill that component, you can do unsubscribe. Like that. That's of course pseudocode, because we don't have any observables here, but that will be an option, a use case for that component lifecycle. So as I said here, we can hook it to a lifecycle events, and then we can use it in the way we want to have it. That's how we can implement it, and you don't have to do it, and then you just create that method whenever it's useful for you. Okay, in this video we will be talking about conditional formatting. So basically our goal is to toggle some kind of views based on some condition. So this will be classical if, and based on that condition we would like to show something or hide something, or do something on our page, or display different kind of content. So we have a few ways to do that in React, and I will show you different examples. So first, I'm inside the, let's do that in the app application, which is app.js here, and we have, let's say that create alert that we, well, okay, I'll create a new function here, and then I will create a function, and that will be our component, and we'll show message like that. And this will be our message here. So what I can do is return, we can do h2 my message like that. So I have a component, quick component here, show message, and what I can do is I can display that below my component, below my footer. And then we have my message here. So what if I would like to have that display based on some conditions? So what I can do is, let's say we can pass some conditions into that component. So I can do to show, and then I can do true like that, and then I can receive it in props like that. And I can do a condition here. So if props to show, then I will do this, else I can do something else. For example, forbidden, like that. So my message is displayed here because I passed true. If I will pass false, you can see forbidden. So this is the way we can actually decide what kind of content goes into our page. We can have a normal JavaScript if conditions based on some conditions here, and we can return it here. So basically that will work for anything what we have on our page. For example, we have our application here and we return this. So what I can say is I could do a condition if some conditions are met, then return this, otherwise return, for example, we can do if user login, then display this, and then otherwise I can do something else. I can do the same thing as I've done here, so forbidden, and then user login, I can set this user login, I can do So if I will run it now, you can see entire content is forbidden. But if I will have a login user in my application, you can see everything is displayed properly. So basically everything what I have return, I can wrap it in any content, and I can use condition and return any HTML or JSX part of this return, and this will be printed. So that's one way to print it. I will revert it back to what I had before, just to not mess too much with the code. It will be easier to read later on, and then also I can remove this. So basically we might have typical if inside our JavaScript, and based on that if we can display certain parts of our page. Another way to display things will be to use that inside HTML. So what we can do, I mentioned that before, when we use curly brackets like this, that means we can run any JavaScript there. And what we can do inside, we can have a ternary operator. So what I can say is, maybe I can move to our component where we have something to use, like this one. So we have a footer with some state, so I can use this maybe inside the footer. So we at the moment we have this page by Christian and then input. What I can do here is I can have this curly brackets, and then I can have a ternary operator, which is inline if condition statement. So I can do this state, and let's say I can do age like this. If that's equal to 35, then I can do something. So I can do two things, and I will show you that in a second. So that's all about what I have now. And then we have in this syntax, we have condition, which is this one. So we check if our state age is equal to 35. If so, this is if, and then if it is, then this will be printed. If it's not, this will be printed. So if I will save it now, you can see yes, it's printed. So if I will compare it with some other age, this is printed. So basically that's a ternary operator, inline operator, and we can use it directly inside our HTML here. And this condition, maybe any condition we like. So we might have, for example, login and login user here, and we can also validate that. Important part here is that we don't need to keep it like a simple text here. We might have the entire elements there. So what I can do is I can do like that, and inside this parentheses I can, let's wrap entire content here, and I can put it there. This kind of start to look very weird now, and we have an error because we should return only one element from this. So what I need to do is I could do a React fragment and then wrap it everything inside React fragment, and then the error is gone. So basically we have h2 tag and the input inside React fragment. So I display this, all of this, when the age is 36. It is not. So you can see here no footer is displayed, and then we have this one. If I will change it to 35 in the same way as I compared it before, you can see everything is displayed. So we at the moment we have age 35. So in here we can have another version of this. So we are not restricted to display this as a simple text. We might have something here. So I can say, I will remove this, and I can say and then I can have, for example, so I might have two different outputs, two different part of this, and then if I will have, like, for example, if I will make it like this, it will have more sense. So we will kind of compare state is login. So if it is login, then we'll display this, and you can't see this content. And we display it, you must be login. That's what we display there, because is login is false. And then if I will make it true, you can see this is display. So that's another way how we can actually toggle things and display certain parts of our application based on certain conditions. So we have a few ways to do it, a few ways to write our syntax. One will be inline like this, and then the first is the condition, then you have question mark, and then this section here is when this condition is met, then it will be display, and then you have colon, and then you have another condition, and if that is not met, then you will have another. Or you can use normal function, and inside JavaScript you can return a content based on the condition you pass it there. So that's conditions in React, and they are used very often. And I have to say I don't really like this syntax that much, but there is not much I can do about it. Usually I go for something like this, and it's sometimes really hard to read where is the section starting, where it's ending, and so on. But that's how the React works, so we just need to get used to it. Okay, in this video we will be talking about loops, how we can actually perform and display a loop element. So before we will do that, we'll need to create an array that we can use in our example. So let's create a constant, and that will be an array of animals, like that. And what I can do is, it will be a simple array, and then we can do a cat, and then we can do another one, dog, and then let's say horse. So we have a simple array here, and if we would like to loop through all that animals and put it on the page, we need to do it here. So what we can do, I will remove what we had before, and I will have just one single curly brackets here, and we'll start it from here. So if I will save it now, you can see there is nothing in the footer actually, because at the moment we are working in the footer.js. So what we can do is we can access our variable as it is here, and then we can do map on it. Map is a JavaScript function. So basically what we have here, it is we need to pass a callback, and we can loop through all of it and do something for each record. We can do a traditional function, or we can do arrow function. I will do an arrow function here, so I can do animal like that. So it's a variable that will have an access to wherever we will loop for a next item, and then I will have curly brackets again. So this is my function here. So what I can do here is I can return something. So return, and I could return animal like that. So that's my simplest loop from what I can do now. So if I will save it, you can see here cat, dog, horse all together, because I just return animal, and animal it's just a simple string. So what I can also do is I can do any element we have like that. So if I will save it now, you can see this is not printed anymore. What I will need to do is I will need to wrap it in another curly bracket. So that means use the animal, but it's not going to be word, it will be actually a value from this animal. So I will save it now. You can see cat, dog, horse, it is displayed. So that's a simple loop we have on our page, and it's looping through all of them and do h1 for each of it. So what else we can do? We can have more than one line. So we already talked about how to do it. So we'll need to wrap this in the parentheses, and then I could do something like that. And then I could, let's say, duplicate this. And also I will do a div like this. And then I will save it. So you can see each of these, it's printed twice. So we are not restricted to just one line or one thing to display. We can display here anything what we like. So that's very useful for things like if we have a complex object and let's say we would like to see tiles of the articles or something, we can actually go for each article, and then we can have a title, we can have a description, image, and so on, so on. So this will be a very useful map method that it is available on the JavaScript, and we can use it for looping in our view. But there is one thing that I would like to show you that is not working at the moment. So if I will inspect this page and I will go to the console, I will make it on the bottom like that. So you can see each child in list should have a unique key prop. So what does it mean exactly? It means that if we loop through that, React doesn't really know what to do with this one, because it will try to treat every single record as a unique one. So what we need to do is we need to pass a key to our loop. And if I will pass it key like here, normally if you have just one record like h1 returned here, you will need to pass a key here, but you always do it on the top level. So if you return this div will need to have a key. And I can do key here, and then I can name it in a unique way. I can do animal here because I know that animal is unique. I have cat, dog, and horse. So what I could do is I could save it, and now I don't have that error anymore, because what I'm doing is each of these items, so this is one item here, this is another item because I printed twice, and this is another item. So each of this is unique because I add key animal to it. So if I will copy on this and inspect, and then it's a little bit, I will need to make a little bit more space here and put it maybe on the side. If I go here, I can't really see keys here, but that's that's unique for React, and React will treat this as a separate item on the page. In this way, he can actually distinguish in between these different items in a loop. So that's how these things are done, and we can do a loop this way. But normally if you have an array like this, you should find something that will be for sure uniqueness. I know this is unique because I just made it up, but if you fetch some data from the database, from some backend, then you can't be sure all of them will be different or unique. So what you can do is usually when you loop through the array of objects, you have something like an ID. So you will have animal ID. In our case, we don't have it because it's a simple string, not an object. But the ID will be perfect for our keys, and then you can have animal name or whatever you might have on your object. But the ID are ideal candidates for using that for key, because we know that ID is unique coming from a database. So this is the way we can actually use it. But in our case, we don't have it, and we are secure because I've made up this array and I know this is all unique. So I will save it, and I can actually get rid of one of those, and we have our loop here. Okay, let's talk about router in React. So what is router? Router decides on the page that we currently are. React is a single page application framework. That means we are always in the index page and we just replace the page based on the current context. So basically what we can do is we can decide, let's say we will have a few links, and then if we click that link we'll go to another page. But in our case it's not going to be another page, it might be another component. So to handle this we can use a router. And there is no router built in React, so we'll need to add it as an external library. So what I can do for now is I can close this footer and we'll stay with the app.js for now. So we have this display, nothing has been changed, and then I will stop my server. So I will do Ctrl+C. The server has been stopped. You can see some messages here, and what we'll need to do is we'll need to add a router DOM. So npm install, or you can do I in shortcut, npm install, and then we will do react router DOM, like that. So npm space install space react dash router dash DOM, and in here what we can do is we can add this dash dash save. And I talked about it before, and I will make some more space here. And if you open this package.json as we have here, dependencies here, this is what we already have installed. So npm install will add react router DOM to these dependencies, and this save is telling us, okay, we would like to add it to the dependencies here. So what we can also do is we could go like that. So add it to our package.json, but inside dev dependencies. At the moment we don't have any dev dependencies here, so it will just create a new section and it will be added here. In our case we would like to add it inside our dependencies here, but since npm version 5 we don't need to do that save flag anymore, because by default it is added for us. So what I can do is just having npm install and then name of the package I would like to install, and then clicking enter, and you can see this will be downloaded from the internet, and then it will be installed within the node modules, and also automatically it will be added in the dependencies. And you can see here that's been added. So we have this one version 5 added to our package.json, and I didn't have to do anything. That's been done by for me automatically. So I can close it. Actually, you don't even need to open this. I just had it open for you to see how it works, but normally you have it closed all the time and you don't need to worry about this at all. Okay, so once we have a new packet, what we can do is from that new packet we can import two things. So import route and browser router from the package we just installed. So we have those here, and then we can actually use it. So what is happening? Actually, I'm not gonna do that here. I will show you where we can actually implement it. It's really up to us where we would like to do it, but I will go to the top level element, which is our index.js here. And index.js here, basically it's rendering this application inside our root. So I can actually start from here, and then I can decide at this point what should be passed to this root based on the URL we have in our browser. So we have this route and browser router, and we can instead of app.js we can actually pass the router inside. So we can create a variable that will be constant routing, and then in the parentheses I can do something here. So basically this routing here, I can replace it with an app like that. And then what we need to do is we need to wrap everything in the browser router like that. And inside we can use our routes. We also will have more than one, so I will wrap everything in the div and then I will create a route for each component, let's say we'd like to use it. So we have our route here, and then we can do a path like that. And then let's decide on the path. If there will be nothing in my URL like this, so at the moment it's localhost 3000 and there is nothing there, so it is like a single slash, then I can decide what component I would like to use. And then I can say the application component. That's how it was before. So before we pass this to render, the app component here, and that was render based on this. But this time we are saying if the path is like this, so there's nothing in the URL, then use the component app. And if I will save it now, actually I need to run it. So npm start. So let's come back to our previous. And you can see here everything is as we had it before. So basically this time we are saying just render whatever it's actually from the routing, and the routing decided on based on the path which component to render. So we have just one, and in this case we have app. So let's say we would like to have header and footer. That will be like a separate pages. I will just copy this, it will be easier for me to use it in the index, and I will just import them here, and then I can duplicate this twice. So let's say if I will have header, and then I can have footer. So if I will have header, then I would like to use header component. If I will have a footer, I will use footer component. Of course, this is header and footer, so it shouldn't be used as a whole page, but as an example, I would like to show you how it works. So basically what we have here, so once we have that different rows here, what we can do is if we go to our URL and we see the app component, because at the moment the path is like this, but we can add, for example, let's add footer at the very end, and you can see here a strange thing happening. You have this footer because we had that loop inside our footer, and you have it twice. So this is the app and this is the footer. So why this is happening? The reason for this is React is going from top to the bottom, and it will try to match all the paths. So basically it's trying to match this one. Do we have this one? So it's like URL and slash, it is, and it doesn't really mind if you have something after this, but this match this path, so it will render this component, and then it goes for a header, nothing in the header, and then it will go footer, there is footer, so it will display. So at the moment we have both app and the footer. So how can we deal with that? If you would like to have it exactly like it is here, you need to pass exact here. So this way you are telling, okay, if the path will be exact like this, so nothing else in the URL, then render the application. Otherwise, go to the next one. So we are checking header, no header, and then footer, there is footer, so we display this. So if we come back here to normal URL, you can see the app is displayed. So this is how the router works, and obviously you're not going to do it with header and footer. This is supposed to be a real pages or some kind of navigation, and then you can have a normal navigation as you would have in a traditional HTML page, and then you can have a link. So if you link it to this URL, then React automatically loads that component for you, so you can work with links and you can work with different URLs to display different content for your website. Okay, in this video we will be talking about context. Before I mention communication in between the parent and child, and we've done that with props. So we can pass any information to the child with this props here, and then we can receive it in the child. And then we can do it in the same way, going up like we've done it here. So basically this is a very efficient way to communicate, but sometimes when your application is large, this is not efficient anymore, because you might have thousands of different components and they are not really necessary one parent to another. So passing these props might be too much, especially if you have a lot of parent and child. So let's say we have some information on the top parent and would like to pass it down a few components. So you'll need to pass it from the parent to the child, from the parent to the child, and so on, until you will get it in the child you want to receive it. And sometimes this is not really efficient because you will need to do a lot of steps there. So React has a new way to do this, and it's called context. So basically what context is, it's a kind of global state variable that we can keep. So what we have in context is we create a context and then we have a provider and consumer. So in the provider, we'll just feed the provider with the data, and in the consumer, we can consume that data. So that's how it works. So basically we can create that context in the top level element, and we in our case I will create it in app.js, and we can consume that in any of the child that will wrap around it. So I will show you that, but I have to say our application is very small. I wouldn't do it normally. I'm just doing that for an educational purpose only. Normally this context shouldn't be used or overused. In that way, it should be only used in a certain situation when you need to have a global variables share in between different components. It's not a good idea to have everything there. Anyway, let's see how we can actually work with the context API. Let's go to the index.js. This is our top level React component as we have here, and this is where we actually render our application to the root. So let's create a context here, and I will do that here. So I'll do constant. I will store my context in a constant, and then I can name it. So I will do context, and then I will do React create context like this. So this is our context, and I said that before, we can have two things. We can have a consumer and we can have a provider. So I can do in the same way we've done it above. So I can do const and you can see here I'm a consumer, and the same way I can do with consumer, I can do provider, and then here I will have a provider. So I have three variables. I have a variable to context, and then from the consumer and provider I use this context from here. So what I need to do, first I need to have a provider to wrap something around it. So usually you do that in a top level element. In our case, we have a routing here. So what I can do is I could wrap everything what's inside here in a provider. So I could do this context provider like here, or actually I don't need that here, since I will be using this provider only in this file. I can grab this exactly like it is here, and let's wrap this. I will have a provider. You can see that's my tag, and I will wrap whatever it's here inside provider. That means if I will have data on my provider, that data will be available anywhere here. So that will go to the app it will go to the header, footer, and so on. So let's say we don't have this. So if that will go to the app has a header and footer here. So it will also go down to components and components. So wherever I would like to use it, once I will wrap the top element component, it will be available anywhere down this tag. So we have a provider, and I've created here just for you to see it, but for now I can remove the provider because I have directly used this context provider from here. So what we actually need to do, let's create some data, and I will show you how we can actually access that and how to create a provider. What we will do in our example is I will go here in the place where we have actually in the footer. Let's say we would replace this one. So we have this animals here, and at the moment we use animals from our footer component. So if we would like to have some kind of information on the top level element, and would like to use it here in that component straight away. So I will show you how to do it. So I will just copy this, and inside index I will have something similar. So let's say it will be also animals, but this time will be snake, elephant, and then we can go lion. Whatever, that will be just a different set than what we have in our component. So we have animals here. So what we can do, and we have to do, is we need to feed the provider with some values. So you can see value here. And then we pass an object. So this is the first, or the braces are for triggering JavaScript, and the other one will be an object. So I will name this object property animals, and then I will pass this animals here. So basically what I'm doing is I'm passing the value for a provider, this object, and this object will have animals, and that will be array of animals. So at the moment I'm passing these animals to the provider. That means if any down this provider in any component that will be down in this hierarchy, these animals might be available, because they're not straight away available. We'll need to use that consumer. And the reason I put that consumer here in the const, because we need to use it from different applications. So what I will need to do is I will need to export this. So we export this consumer so we can actually import it from other place. So I will copy this, and let's go to the footer, and I will import it here. So we'll import our consumer from, and then we need to go one folder up and then index here. So we have access to our consumer, which is actually this consumer here. So you can close this for now. This consumer here is using the context we have here, and this context is also provider. So you can see here we kind of create the direct link for that context from two different places. So here we pass the animals, and then we need to go to our footer, and then we need to create our consumer. Consumer works in a similar way as we've done with our provider. So we need to wrap something around it when we want to use it. So instead of that div, let's use our consumer. So I will copy this, and we can have it like that. And then what we need to do, at the moment I will just comment this out, not to confuse our code with whatever we had before. So what we need to do is we need to have curly brackets, and then it will be our function. So we'll have a context here, and then we'll use our arrow function here, and then I will have another curly brackets like that, and then inside that I have an access to my context, which is coming from this consumer. So once I have an access here, I can take whatever we had there before, I will just cut it from there and make some more space, and then I can, inside that function here, I can paste it. So what we have here is we have animals, but this time animals are not gonna come from here, but I will access the animals from context. So I will save it now. And we have some syntax error here. You actually have to wrap this inside a div. So we'll have just one element, like that. So it complains about that CDX consumer here, and we export this as a consumer. Let's try to change the name, for example, like that, just to trigger. So we'll have by convention we should actually name anything that is kind of used in attacks by capital letter, and in fact this is working. So that was the thing, that whenever we name this, that should be a capital letter here. I don't know why, but this is how it is. So when we have that situation, then we can wrap it. So what we did, I will show you now, and the important thing is now we can see snake, elephant and lion. You can see here in the footer we have a loop through animals like we have it before, but this one is actually commented out. So at this point I can remove it completely, and you can see here I still have that printed, and this is coming from this index.js. So we made our first context API working. So for repeating that again, we created a context, and then from that context we've done two things. We've done a provider when we feed the value, and this is up to you what you would like to feed in here. The important part is that we have object inside, and then we feed that inside. So whatever it's in between that and will be in the child relationship will have an access to this. So we have a value that we can keep it, and then it will be available for any child inside. And then we export also the consumer from that context. So this is available. When we export it, we can import that from any other place. And we've done that in footer. We just import that, and we wrap our component with that consumer and with the arrow function like context, and from that moment you have an access to context, any value on that context, and we pass animals, so we could loop through animals, and we pass that animals here. So basically that's how we can share the data in between different components and have a kind of global stage. Because this is global, we'll keep everything here, and we can communicate it with this and have an access to that, and we don't need to pass it down the road every time we have parent child, parent child, parent child. So that will be the way to do it. But as I said, don't overdo it. This is for only cases to store the global variables, not for everything. Okay, in this video we will be talking about styling. We haven't touched styling yet. We kind of have CSS styles already here, and this is what is available already in our React application, whatever we've created, and we don't really use them at all. And so I open the app CSS here, and that's a file that is loaded with our app.js here. So we have app.js. I'll close it here to have more space, and basically we import that CSS files here, and you can see that's a traditional HTML CSS kind of styling, because that's just a bunch of different classes and they apply. So whenever we import this here, that will be available and it will style our website. So this is built in styles. We have app header, app logo, and so on, but we don't use them anymore because we don't use the built-in class. We actually have a class name app here, and that's it. So basically this is applied. The rest of it we remove it, so we can actually go and remove this. So we have this style that's a leftover from whatever was created for us with create React app. So we'll save it now. You can see the only thing is text line center. So just to prove it, if I will do background color, let's say like this, you can see my application is background color. And the reason for this, I have a class name here, and that's app is the same as this one. I mentioned that before. In React, the way to do a class, it's class name, because class is restricted for word for JavaScript, so we can't really use the class name, so we need to use class name. But we could use something like an ID. We had that already in the normal HTML, and it is available in our React. And also we have the style like that. So this is available. The only problem collision is with class. When you remember to use class name, everything will be easy. So basically what we have an option to style our application. So the first option will be to use normal CSS, and you can group your CSS with your JavaScript. So you might have different CSS for each part, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to conflict, because it will be just loaded and it will be resolved as any other CSS. So if you have styles that might impact other components, this will happen. So you need to be careful with the selectors, because they might interfere with each other. It doesn't mean that once you load it here, it will be available only here. So that being said, you have an option to style it with a normal attributes and selectors. As you can see here, that's a class selector here. So that's one option. Another option will be to use, actually I need to for a moment uncomment this and save it, so you can see it's working fine. So now another option will be inline styling. So for example, we have this header here or the main content here. So what I could do is I could do style, and then equal, I can have some inline styling here. Let's say I will have p style like that. This p style, I need to create a constant p style, and then I can create an object. So this time I will create a style for this content inside our kind of JavaScript, and we will use a similar to CSS properties. Like for example, if I want to have a font size, I need to do like that. Let's say 2M. That needs to be wrapped in the commas like that. So I have this p style applied here. If I will save it now, you can see here this one is bigger, and normally in the same style in the normal CSS I will have it like that. So remember, if you have dash in the CSS, in this format you will have without dash but camel case, so lower letter, upper letter for each new word. So font size, for example, I can go do another one. So color, this is one word only, so I don't need to do that. The camel case as seen here, and then I can say, for example, red. And you can see this is red. So this is inline styling, and we can do it this way. Also remember to wrap everything here, like red normally is a keyword, but sometimes like units you have here in the CSS, you don't wrap it in the quotes, but this time you need to do it because you need to treat this as a string. Okay, so that's another way to do it. So what other options do we have? Very popular solution for React is to use styled components. Now we can go to the website here. So we are in the website styledcomponents.com, and this is style components explanation how we can actually use it. So what we need to do is we need to install styled components in our application in order to use them. I'll just copy this and I will go to here. I will close my server, so Ctrl C will close it, and I can do Ctrl V. So npm install save. We don't need to do it, but there is no harm. So styled-components, that's what you need to install, and it will be added. And then what we can do is we can start using this. So we need to import this, and let's come back to our page and I will show you how we can actually use it when that will be installed. So first thing first, we need to import the styles from this library that we have just installed. And this style, it will give us an option to use some of the functionality from the style components. So first, let's do npm start and start our server again. And let's create here a new styled component. So what we can do is we'll create another constant and let's call it paragraph, like that, and then it will be equal to styled and then dot p, like the paragraph. So basically what we are doing is we create a p tag and we will call it paragraph, like this. Then here I will do a backtick twice. So that's a new way we can actually wrap our strings around, and then inside we can have any styles we like. So let's say we'll have font size like this, but inside we don't need to do this. We can have a normal CSS. So this time we'll have, let's change this to green, for example, and then do something bigger, so 3M, and we'll have it like this. So basically what I did is I create a paragraph that will be our new element that we can use. So we have this styled paragraph here that we styled with an inline style. Let's create a new paragraph here, and inside I can do new styled, like that. So if I will save it now, you can see here new styled is there. So what I'm doing with styled components is I create my own tags, my own elements, so I can do anything really what is here. This case I use the P and I name it paragraph. So this paragraph I use it as a tag here, and I can put inside whatever I like. So it is still the paragraph, but this paragraph takes these styles, and whatever I have here they will be used. The good thing about this is I can reuse it, so next time I would like to use the same style for paragraph, I can just use this paragraph, or you can have that exported in one file and then you import into different components the same styles, and this is the way to do it. So that's a few ways how we can actually control our styles and our CSS. The first one will be traditional CSS from the CSS file, and then you import it in the file itself. Another one will be with inline styles, like the style here. And another very popular is the styled components. This is extra library, but it's very handy to work with. Okay. In this video, I will be talking about hooks, and I will explain what hooks are and how we can actually use it. Hooks are a very new addition to React, and there is a big hype on the hooks now because they allow you to use something like you can always use in a class components, but inside our functional component. So basically that opens a completely new world, and I will show you how that works in this video. So first thing what I will do is I'll create a new component here. Let's name it, for example, numbers.js, and I will create a new component there. And let's clean it up a little bit. So we have app.js here and we have a lot of things here. So instead of printing all of that, I'll just create a I will just import new component, so I'll clear it for now here, and let's create a new component here. To show how the hooks works, I will create a normal function component. So I will do import React, and we've done that before. And then I will do from React like that, and then I will create a function. I will create an arrow function here, so I will do a constant, and I can do numbers is equal to, and then arrow function like that. It can be also with a function keyword, it doesn't really matter. So here I can do return h1 numbers. And then what I can do is export default numbers like that, and then I will import it. So here I can import, I will just copy that, and that will be numbers from numbers like that. So we have numbers here, and I will just input it inside here. So what we have is we have that numbers here, and there is nothing complicated in there. So we just load our new component in the app.js. I will close the app.js here, and on that component we can work on the hooks, and I will show you how the hooks works. Basically, as I said before, hooks allows you to use similar things as we can use in the component in the functional component. This is functional because in fact we have a function, and this is normal variable which represent a function. So I could have the function keyword here and use it as a function. But I said that before, that in the function components I can't use the state, for example. But in the newest version of React, we can actually use state in functional component using hooks. So how can we do that? First, we need to import use state. And that's a function that we can import also from React and use it in our functional component here. So what I will do is I will use a state, and that's a function. So what I can do with that function, basically I can provide a value that I will use in my state. So for example, let's say I will have an array of few numbers. So I can do 1, 2, and let's say 3. So I have that, and that's allowing me to use a state, and it will be similar to the state class component. So what this means is we can actually initiate state on that component. So how can we use it? At the moment, there is no way we can use it. We just initialize that. So what we can do is we can actually create a constant, an array, and we can assign this to state. So what we can put in that array, we can deconstruct whatever is coming back from this state. And there are two things that are coming back from state: the initial value or the current value, and also a method to update the value. So what we can have here is we would like to keep our numbers here. So I can do numbers, and that's our current value of our state, and another method will be set numbers. So we can name it whatever we like. It doesn't have to be, I will make a little bit more space here. It doesn't have to be numbers or set numbers. Basically what I'm trying to name, I'm using convention that the first value in the array is the number, or whatever represents the data, and the second one is set, because we will use that function. Actually, this is one is function to set something, to update this state. Okay, so how can we actually use it? Let's create a new map. So I will refer to numbers, and then I will map through the result of this, and let's say it's a number, and then we'll go through all the records there. We've done that before. So what we need to do is we need to print some values. So I will return, let's say we can return h4, and inside we can do a number. That is what I want to do, but we need to have a wrapping container here, so I'll just wrap it inside the div. So I will have it like that. It's not complaining anymore. And then we have that. We should put the key here, but at this point it's not important. So what we are having here is we loop through our numbers, and that numbers, it's actually coming from this function useState, and we provide the initial value 1, 2, 3. So I will save it now. Let's see what we have. So in fact, we have 1, 2, 3 printed here. So our state is working fine. So how can we actually update our state if we have it here? So this is the way we refer to our state, which is number, because that's the constant. It is first object in our array. This is the current state, and the second one is the method to update it. So let's create a new method. So I will say add number, and I will make an arrow function here. Like that. So we have a new method here. I can actually do a constant. So we have that method. I will create a button, and then I do on click. I can say add a number. So we'll on click, we will trigger this function, and in this function we can do something. So what can we actually do? I can use set numbers, and that's gonna be our function to actually update the state. So what we need to do is we need to, in here, we need to provide some kind of value. So if I will provide a value here, that will be the same value. We have array here, so I will provide an array, and let's say I will do 4. So if I will update it now, we have 1, 2, 3, and then I have a button. Actually, I should put something here. So add a number. So we have had a number here. If I click it here, you can see my entire state has been changed to 4. And why that happened? Because I use set numbers, and that's my new array. So what I need to do is basically I need to get whatever it's there and concatenate the 4 at the end of it. So what I can do is I can use a newest edition of the JavaScript, so I can spread the numbers into array and add 4 at the end. So if I will do it now, if I will do add a number, you can see 4 is here. So basically what we are having in this simple example is a full use state example of React hooks. So going through that again, what we have, we need to import a use state from React. Then we can use functional components, and we'll use use state function. In the state function, we can provide an initial value of that. This can come from anywhere. It can come from props or whatever you like. And then actually this assign, we have a deconstruction here. So the first element is the current state, and the second one is the method to update it. And then we can, in our return, we can use the current state, like here. That's the variable name we have here. And also we can use method, this one, to do it. But we need to remember that if we'd like to update it something, we also need to provide the initial value. So we can use this one and then add something to it. Or we can first working on the numbers. Once we have it, then we can put it in the set numbers method. So in fact, we are not really limited to only one state. What I could have is I could have another one, which is, for example, letters, and set letters use state A, B, C, and so on. At the moment we see that green thing because we don't use it and we just initialize it, but this use state can be used with different pieces of information, and you will have it one block of information for one kind of data you would like to store in your state. So this is how it's working. There is a big hype on this React hooks now, so it might be very convenient to know that this is another method to deal with the state, and you don't need to use a class component anymore. Okay, so we already know how to replace some of the functionality with our functional components. The functionality we have in the class components, but we never had it before with a functional. So one crucial part of this is state. So we know how to use it when you have use state. So what else is missing on our functional component? In the class component we have an event. So we can hook to when a component did mount, for example, and on component update, and so on and so on. In the functional component, we never had that before, but with hooks, we have that ability to actually control it in a little bit different way. In my opinion, you have more control with this, and I will show you in this video how we can use it. So first thing what we need to do is we need to import another function from React, and it will be use effect. So that function will be similar to what we have here. So I can put it there, use effect, and then basically this effect, it accepts a callback. That means a function. So I will do a arrow function here, and then we will have it. So we don't need to pass anything here. What I would like to do is I will just show you. If I will console log, let's say we put our use effect triggers. So we are here in the component. At the moment we have a warning and then some other things. This is coming because we don't have a unique key in our map here, so we'll leave it as it is. So we're supposed to have something unique, and we could add an ID to this or a random number. It doesn't really matter. What I will do is I will just remove it for now, and I would like to illustrate you something else. So we have that use effect method in place. If I will add a number here, you can see our use effect triggers. If I will click another one, you can see this is twice. Why this is happening? So every time I change something on my state, one of the states, it will trigger this effect. That means I can have it here. So let's do something similar here. And so if I will do, that will make it better to illustrate what is happening. Add letter, and then we'll have letters. So basically, and I will just do similar thing as we had with the numbers, but with a different state. So if I will come back here, I have add a number and add a letter. At the moment I don't display that numbers yet, that letters yet, so let me just grab this, and then maybe I can do it here, and then I will have letters, letter, and then letter. So we'll have it like that. We'll have numbers and letters. So I'm here, I'll just remove this, we can ignore it for now. So what I can do is I can add a number and add a letter. So this will add a letter. Actually, we are adding that to a wrong one. So I will go here and quickly set numbers. We shouldn't use this one, we should use set letters when we use add letter. So once again, my mistake, clear that. So if I add a number, I have 4, and you can see our function trigger. But if I will add this one, you can see our function trigger. So basically, whatever I change, no matter of which one state, this function useEffect triggers. So basically that also triggers when we have a new application. So whatever our component mode, this is also triggering here. You can see our useEffect triggers. So the first time it renders, it prints it. Every time we change something, it prints it. So this is basically working as on update. So whatever we update our state, we have it. But the good thing here is that we can control when it's actually trigger. So this function here, this callback, it's a first argument. What we can do is we can provide a second argument, and I can provide, as you can see here, an array. So if I will provide an array like this, in that array I can specify which states I should listening for updates. If I will provide nothing here, if I will save it, I can go here and you can see this has been triggered once. If I will click here, it's not anymore. If I click here, it's not anymore. That means it triggers only one. So that function, we have useEffect. It's the same effect as we component did mount. First time it triggers, we run whatever it's here, and then it's over. It's not going to listening for anything. So let's say we would like to trigger this one. So use our effect triggers only on numbers, right? So if I want to have it trigger on numbers, what I will need to do is I will take these numbers and put it array here. So in this way, I use effect only on changed numbers. So if I'll go back here, you can see here, this is trigger because we render our numbers. If I'll click letter, nothing happened. If I'll click number, you can see this triggers on numbers. So in this useEffect, you can specify which values you will be listening for to update and use this. So I can specify another one, letters, like that. So at the moment I'm listening for numbers and letters changes. So this is trigger because I have it on the first go when it's render, and then number triggers, letter triggers. So you can see how handy that can be if you want to update something. So whatever you will have here and whatever change that you will have to change the data, you can also change it based on some external factors. For example, you fetch the API, it's getting back and you feel that, then you will have a useEffect to do it. Or you're looking for a user input that will fill in the fields, and once this is done, then you can do something with the data. At the moment we have a dummy console log here, but in here you can use whatever you want. The options are limitless at this point because you catch the event. Whenever something's changed, you have an access to this state or whatever else is on this component, and you can actually hook into the event the same way as we hook it with our class-based component. So useEffect and useState, that's all together all the functionality that were missing on the functional components, and they're available now. So we can use basically the same functionality as we had on the class components in the functional